got this awake, earlier this morning. I've seemed to have found my footing.
You seem to have woken up.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's Law and Legitimacy.
Hurl one at us, Norm. Hurl one at us right now.
It's Thursday. I'm sitting there looking at the live stream, thinking, who's here this morning? Good morning, Freedom Lover 63. It is a good morning. Hey, so the Kohberger case out west, prosecution has gone to a grand jury and sought an indictment, laying down the marker, saying basically to Mr. Kohberger, this is it, and we are coming to get you. No big surprise to me, Mike. You seem more surprised by that than I. It struck me that they would go to a grand jury. I'm not sure whether is it Idaho law? I'm not sure whether they have to. So in the federal system, for example, and in many states, to be charged with a serious crime requires a grand jury indictment or a waiver of a grand jury indictment. And so there's a strategic question for both sides with respect to whether to waive a grand jury indictment. A person can be arrested even in a regime that requires an indictment by way of a criminal information. And what are these terms I'm talking about? What is a grand jury? There are what are called petite juries, in other words, little juries, jurors that decide.
Little juries.
Hi, I'm a member of a petite jury. Can you give me some hot cross buns and a croissant, please? And I'll take 2 sugars with my latte. And then there's,
excuse me, Your Honor, I don't want a regular jury. I want a petite one.
And then there's a grand jury. Give me the star, give me a Dunkin' Donuts with 2 sugars, and a bunch of milk. No, but petite jury decides discrete cases. A grand jury decides whether there's a case at all. And grand jury proceedings are typically secret. And in regimes that require them, a grand jury must conclude that there's probable cause for the prosecution to go forward. An interesting little wrinkle for you law nerds. We've talked before about federalism. Obviously, we talk a lot about it, about the difference between state and federal powers, and the Bill of Rights obviously has its source in the federal Constitution. Almost every guarantee that of a right that the Bill of Rights offers, including a right to be indicted by a grand jury, has been incorporated against the states. In other words, the courts have held that although the Bill of Rights limits the federal government, it shall limit state governments too. Grand jury proceedings are optional still. Although the federal Constitution requires grand juries, states are not required to do so. So in my home jurisdiction of Connecticut, we almost never have grand juries. And when we do, they're typically judge grand juries, one judge grand juries. And they are usually used in order to give the state enhanced investigative powers, including subpoena power, which they don't have in the absence of a grand jury. But once a grand jury makes a decision, those are the charges. And so Kohberger's lawyers were undoubtedly in negotiations with the state of Idaho about whether Kohberger would waive a grand jury indictment, and Kohberger didn't. What strategic decisions would inform the decision not to waive? I think Kohberger's lawyers wanted the state to be forced to present evidence to a neutral body, to the grand jurors, because that might yield discovery. That is, the state will make a commitment to a theory of the case. It will have witnesses testify that they saw this rather than that. And by pinning down the state's theory, Kohberger's lawyers have a better idea of what to attack. And so it's a signal, this grand jury indictment, that Kohberger's lawyers intend to fight every step of the way. And it's hardly surprising that they would. I mean, these are murder charges after all. Murder in the first degree, we see 4 times, together with burglary and other related charges. This is not the kind of case in which you can effectively plea bargain. Unless, and I don't know this, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know, Mike, unless Idaho has a death penalty, there's really nothing to negotiate here. When a person is facing death, obviously, in an overwhelmingly strong case, and I'm not saying this is, the prosecution can often say, look, we won't seek to kill your guy. If he'll just plead guilty, he can do life without possibility of parole. Some people take that bargain. Others say, the hell with it. You want to end my life as a free man, you're going to have to end it altogether. Let's go to war. Kohberger's going to war, and that's it.
Don't be embarrassed, Norm. But Idaho is a capital punishment state, and we have 4 counts of first-degree murder here. First-degree murder is within the purview of the death penalty statute in Idaho. So make no mistake, like you just said, if the death penalty is on the table, and I can't think of a case with facts that would have to be up beyond what we have here to qualify for the likelihood of a death penalty.
Well, off we go. So let's see what happens. So Kohberger's in.
Yeah, a couple things here before we move on. I'll switch back to the article, the Idaho Statesman. I found this article. I'll put it on the screen because I want our viewers to be able to find it and read it if they want. This is a well-written article. Never read Sally Krutzig, but it's really comprehensive. So it'll give you a quick factual background without inundating you with too much information. And then regarding grand jury proceedings, Norm, are you familiar with Duncan Levin?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So he was quoted in this article, and here's his quote regarding the decision to seek a grand jury indictment on behalf of, I guess, on the prosecutor's behalf. But grand jury proceedings offer greater secrecy, allowing prosecutors to present sensitive evidence and witness testimonies without compromising ongoing investigations or witnesses' safety. Additionally, grand juries can be impaneled for an extended period, giving prosecutors more time to gather evidence and testimony, especially if some witnesses may be uncooperative or require subpoenaing. And I wanted to read that for a couple of reasons. One, the secrecy aspect. We know we had the preliminary hearing upcoming, but then also there was the report of the defense looking to subpoena one of the surviving roommates of the deceased.
Yeah.
And I don't know but it does start to I think assist with giving more time. Obviously that's pretty self-explanatory. You seem to think, however, that this is more about what?
I'm just fixing the case. I think that, I'm sure that the state went to Kohberger's lawyers and said, will you waive the preliminary hearing? No, the lawyer wanted the discovery. He wanted the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses and perhaps to present a view himself. Okay, you won't do that. So then we're going to indict. Maybe they've had plea negotiations, plead guilty, and we won't seek the death penalty. We don't know that. I can imagine that would be a set of moves that would have taken place. But now the state has basically said, okay, look, we're not going to submit our witness to a public cross-examination by you. There is no cross-examination in a grand jury context. We've presented just enough information to get our indictment, and we're locked into that information now. These witnesses have testified under oath in front of the grand jury. You'll be able to get that in the course of discovery, but the state has committed to its theory now, its theory of the case, and off we go. And I don't know when the case will next be down. It appears, however, though, that Idaho has concluded that it's going to allow cameras in the courtroom, so this will be a televised proceeding, and it'll be interesting. There's going to be some pretty sophisticated medical evidence in terms of or forensic evidence in terms of DNA and so forth, and I think the public will be well served by seeing that.
Well, hopefully none of the DNA evidence that is reported in this case comes from what you talked about a couple of days ago, where they just were able to walk through the forest and collect DNA.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because when I mentioned that, you mentioned it in the Kohberger case, and I'm not sure that it would be related here, but the story we saw was reported in the New York Times and then widely reported elsewhere that forensic environmentalists have been out in the fields trying to trace the paths that various animals take or wildlife take, and they report that the fields through which the animals pass are often contaminated by human DNA, and this is DNA that's been shed by people that have walked through the fields, thus raising the possibility that trace DNA, which you can now leave by touching something, transfer DNA from your fingertips, might actually be shed as you walk along, leaving a DNA footprint. It is absurd, but hey, welcome to the world. In the cloud, and Freedom Lover. Do you also watch the stream on YouTube? Active in both chats. I'm suddenly beginning to feel inadequate. I don't watch this in YouTube in the cloud, so don't worry about it. I've only just now figured out how to monitor the chat in Rumble, and I've got two streams going.
The stream that we just referenced, however, seemed to hit a vein. We got 16 new subscribers over on YouTube off that one video. It has over 1,400 views, which is nice, right? But totally unprecedented. YouTube has been a slog for us. So, as I have said before, I think I came to this endeavor thinking that Rumble was going to be our best performing platform, and make no mistake, it absolutely has been. But YouTube is very quickly acclimating to law and legitimacy, and I think that's a compliment to you, Norm, and a compliment to the
you, Mike. Mike.
Well, so I like that. I think not tremendous reach, but definitely saw a spike way above and beyond where we had ever gotten any traction on YouTube. Hopefully Twitter can do the same thing too, but enjoying having the multiple streams and trying to discern anything from the data that these platforms provide.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. And speaking of discernment, what is going on in Tar Heel Nation? It seems to me that every day there's a new story of great political significance arising out of North Carolina, and I find myself wondering often what's going to become of the world when Donald Trump and Joe Biden, finally step off this mortal coil and we're left alone without these polarizing figures. And I'm starting to think that maybe the next generation of national leadership will come out of North Carolina.
I can't say that at this point I disagree with you. I think what's going on in North Carolina broadly is that people have begun to learn from Trump one key thing, and that is to not be turned into stone by looking into the eyes of the Democrats' Medusa, which is effectively shaming you or trying to out virtue you or make you believe that your principles are somehow inadequate against dominant cultural ideology. And there are a number of public officials and people in North Carolina that are responsible for that shift and for that retreat position, as we'll call it. What's making headlines today is a continuation of the Republican veto-proof supermajority in North Carolina's legislature. We've talked about it a couple of times on this stream before, Norm. Just in general, we've got UNC's case on affirmative action before the Supreme Court, which is something that puts North Carolina in the news.
And that case will be likely be decided within the next 30 to 45 days. I predict that case will resonate as loudly around the country as Dobbs versus Mississippi Women's Health Center did. I think that affirmative action is likely to receive a death blow from this court, and this will inspire social justice activists, enraged social justice activists in ways that the Dobbs decision enraged abortion supporters. But listen, while we focus on North Carolina, let's focus on some big personalities. Who should we be watching? Who is likely to emerge as a star in these contests and to emerge on the national scene as a potential presidential candidate?
Well, I think that we can't go any further without talking about Representative Tricia Cotham, and I've pulled up this article from the Carolina Journal. Again, I think I've been lucky this morning in pulling a couple of really good articles that give adequate factual context and more of a comprehensive report on the issues. But Representative Tricia Cotham, she's the recently turned Republican out of Mecklenburg County. She was the one that was making headlines, and we discussed before, Norm, that was a Democrat. She changed her party affiliation, and that change in party affiliation was interesting because North Carolina had just made changes to its Second Amendment regulation. In particular, she was one of 3 representatives absent from a bill that was passed, from the vote on a bill that was passed that got rid of a bunch of concealed carry qualifications, basically constitutional carry here in North Carolina. And she got a lot of flack for missing that vote. It was shortly thereafter that she announced her changeover to the Republican Party. And
why did she switch? What was it about that vote? Did that vote play a role in her switching? And if so, what role?
Well, I think that that vote was indicative that something had changed already for her personally. And so she's quoted in this article. I think this is going to answer your question better than I can. She says, quote, I, like most North Carolinians, think abortion is a complicated issue without absolute answers. After extensive review, I believe this bill strikes a reasonable balance on the abortion issue and represents a middle ground that anyone not holding one of the two extremist positions can support. And then the article also says Cotham also stated that she had, quote, insisted that any abortion legislation include meaningful support and protections to mothers and children to give them the best chance at a good life. So what I'm basically saying by reading that quote, Norm, is that Tricia Cotham made a conscious decision to leave a party that to her felt had struggled to maintain the values that she ran on for her and advocated to her constituents when she was elected, that the party was not in the hands or the control of those that aligned with her interests and her personal values and those that she believes are in the best interest of North Carolinians. This quote seems like it is a very centrist position. And I think that that is a breath of fresh air, because although the criticism of Senate Bill 20, which I'll scroll up here, and there's a
What does Senate Bill 20 do? I mean, you follow this stuff. Those of us not from North Carolina, what is Senate Bill 20?
So Senate Bill 20 is right here. It says Senate Bill 20 makes the following changes to North Carolina's abortion laws. So it was an effort to, I think, overhaul some of the language that was used and then put it in more clear terms. And then also to limit just the access to abortion and make specific those exceptions and those changes. Here it says that it limits elective abortions in the second and third trimesters. It establishes an exception for rape and incest through 20 weeks. It establishes an exception for fetal life limiting anomalies through 24 weeks. And it maintains an exception to save the life of the mother through the duration of her pregnancy. None of these things, Norm, really strike me as anywhere close to what these, I guess, these people like Senator Mary Wills Bode, they're sort of non-playable characters, as it were, NPCs, as is commonly referenced. I just don't think that it's serious politics to be saying, as we enter this Handmaid's Tale era in North Carolina, Democrats have got to leave that behind if they want to be effective. That kind of stuff doesn't resonate with me.
No,
And
Senator Bode sounds like she sounds like a stereotype. I mean, let's hit the hot squat and
Yep.
eliminate her from the screen. I don't want to give her any more time than we can. Tell us about Speaker Tim Moore. He is another soon to become dominant figure in North Carolina politics that I'm hearing a lot about recently. Who is Senator or Speaker Tim Moore?
Yeah, Speaker Tim Moore. He's a Republican out of Cleveland County, not Cleveland, North Carolina, but Cleveland County. And he, like you said, is a big name. And he's quoted in this article, and I love the quote here. It was introduced as saying that, this bill was not bipartisan, which it's not. It was a vote along party lines strictly. But he says, quote, we talked to a number of Democratic members, and at one point we felt like we had a number of Democrats who were going to vote for this bill and even for an override vote. But they came back to me and said, look, we're feeling overly pressured. We can't do it. So I had hoped that it would be a bipartisan bill and wish it would have been. But I understand that pressure some of the members were under. So that I think that gives insight into him. Obviously, he's a winner in this context. It's something that he was supporting. So he doesn't have to, throw salt or shade anywhere that is, isn't reasonable to do so. So he's talking and he's winning with some level of class here by not being incendiary in this comment. But this is the general nature of politics in North Carolina that I was raised on. This notion of you had phrases like blue dog Democrats and you had bipartisanship, right? And you my entire life, North Carolina, we have been emblematic for that purple nature of our politics, all the while maintaining, I think, in an elegant fashion too, some balance between the rural character, the agrarian character of North Carolina, and the source of our economy, tobacco, cotton, soybeans. There's a lot of farming in North Carolina. So it's a complicated state. In its current state, it's always been a complicated state, historically, but this is a complicated state now more than ever. I think Tim Moore is showing what the ultimate soul of North Carolina politics is. And I believe that he may be more palatable for most people over someone like, here's another name, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. So Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, he's a conservative black man, and he is a major Second Amendment advocate, very outspoken, big tones. Everything that he does just feels big. His rhetoric, his presence, everything. He knows how to move people. Honestly, it's a joy to watch if you're not worried so much about your sensibilities being offended with policies. And I certainly am not by really any of his. But I think that what he would consider in terms of this bill is that it likely doesn't go far enough. But I think that, even though people are saying that perhaps Congressman Mark Walker may be our next governor of North Carolina, I think that Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson is way more likely and would be better.
I want you to channel Mark Robinson now. And I'm, let's say I'm from a blue state and I'm saying, oh, wait a minute, you're in favor of a culture of life in North Carolina, which means you favor increased restrictions on abortion, but you're also a strong Second Amendment guy. Can you have it both ways? If you're in favor of a culture of life, what about these instruments of death? How would Robinson respond to that? Because that's a criticism that will be levied against him.
Yeah, I think that it's a cheap criticism, and I think that you feel the same.
Channel Robinson now, but I want to hear Robinson speak.
Say that firearm regulation does not have a direct correlation with reduction in firearm violence and death, period. And if you can show a linear correlation or causation between the two of those, we can re-enter this discussion. But the Second Amendment is what guards the First Amendment, and it's not to be infringed. North Carolinians need to be able to protect themselves in their home. The state is long regarded as being a strong castle doctrine state. So any other questions, you can talk to my team.
All right. I like that. I like that. Hey, let's pivot. I want you to keep an eye on these North Carolina characters. The title to this segment was Tar Heel Nation. I visited North Carolina last week to go to a graduation of a good friend's son from the Duke Law School. And I was surprised that people spoke English down there. And Durham was a lovely town. It shocked me. I mean, I hadn't been in a city that was so clean and seemingly had more to offer in quite some time. Having said that, I won't find myself living in North Carolina. It's just too damn hot down there already.
Real time here, man. Norm, I
spent a weekend there. I mean, that was a long time,
No. You haven't done the Michael Boyer guided tour of North Carolina yet. We'll get you here. Don't worry.
All right, that'll happen. Hey, TikTok. Jacqueline's been reading my mail again. We were going to talk about this morning. Montana, first state in the nation to take a shot at TikTok. How does it? What did it do? And is it justifiable? And can it withstand legal scrutiny?
So the governor of Montana here, let me get this back on the screen for us. The governor of Montana signed a bill. This has been in the works, I think, since April, and it was Senate Bill 4.
Well, where's his hair?
It's sleeping.
I mean, come on, Governor. I'll lend you 6 inches or so. I'd still have far more left.
Ooh,
Yeah.
So, there's a lot going into this. I'm excited about this for a couple of reasons. One, I think, first and foremost, get TikTok out of the paint, as the kids say, get it out of here. What we didn't talk about, Norm, is the Wall Street Journal opinion piece that I think I sent to you over the weekend. I'm not sure if you were able to read it, but it discussed the impact.
No, I was in North Carolina, and people don't read down there. So,
but you just got done saying that we were literate and that we spoke well and that you loved.
I said they spoke English.
Okay, you said you loved the Brits.
I didn't say people were literate. I didn't, and but I did have a good time down there. I learned how to play a new game called cornhole, and I wondered whether that was a North Carolina pastime. I'm told it's played everywhere. I mean, I don't goof off enough. I found myself at the lovely home of some endocrinologist on a Sunday afternoon, and we were all sitting around outside and a day when I should have been in the office. And the next thing you know, we're throwing bean bags at 27 feet, trying to get them into the hole of some board sitting aslant in the yard. And I'm thinking, wow, this is fun.
Yeah, how you have time at tailgates.
Yeah.
Not that anyone in Durham would know anything about how to tailgate, because neither of those programs know what they're doing in football. Anyway, let's see here.
TikTok. What's going on? Banning sales of TikTok. I don't understand the story. What's going on?
So So Montana is the first state in the union, as they say, to take action of this effect. And the bill itself, like I said, Senate Bill 419, signed into office by Montana's governor, and it says something like this: TikTok may not operate within the territorial jurisdiction of Montana. An entity violates this prohibition when any of the following occurs within the territorial jurisdiction of Montana. A, the operation of TikTok by the company or users, or B, the option to download the TikTok mobile application by a mobile application store. And then it goes further. An entity that violates a provision of this section is liable in the amount of $10,000 for each discrete violation and is liable for an additional $10,000 each day thereafter that the violation continues.
So if I go to Montana and I have TikTok on my phone, which I don't even, I'm not sure what the rage is with TikTok. But if I've got TikTok on my phone and I step into Montana and I look at TikTok, is that a $10,000 problem for me if I'm caught?
No, you as a user are exempted from this, and I'm glad you asked that question. Section 5 says explicitly, penalties in this section do not apply to users of TikTok.
So how will this affect a person who wants to communicate with the world at large? Because I have to tell you, I'm aware of the controversy involving TikTok and its foreign ownership and its negative impact on teens. But from a First Amendment perspective, I don't want the state having its thumb on the scale, limiting what I can and cannot use to communicate with others. Although TikTok is not a content-based regulation, meaning it's not seeking to limit what TikTok can say. It's seeking to eliminate TikTok altogether. And so how does this pass First Amendment scrutiny?
You tell me, Norm. I don't know. I feel like we are in an era, and the expectation this doesn't go into effect until January 1st, 2024. Just for anybody wondering, but the First Amendment argument here is basically what it to me it's no different from the App Store regulating who can and cannot be on its own application. So perhaps there is state action here, and then there's private parties versus state actors. Here we obviously have state action buying through the passing of a bill. This could be a fact pattern on any law school final exam in the country, I think, this year, and probably should be just if instructors are doing their thing. But the way I look at this is simply if these application stores, if app stores, so Google Play, Apple's App Store, I think Amazon has their own. So whomever is regulating the box within which we download all of our apps, we live in an appified society today. Even the way that we use our computers is extraordinarily limited now more than ever. If these houses such as Google and Apple are able to artificially suppress who has access to their app stores and therefore commerce, right, on any grounds, I think I have a question as to how they would also say in this context, well, we don't like certain speech, so we don't allow certain
Look,
things
my issue is even more fundamental and perhaps more stupid. Not that yours is stupid at all. If I have an app store, I have to I can't sell TikTok in Montana, but if a person crosses the state line, I can sell it there.
So this is not stupid at all, Norm. This
Well,
question,
but how is this going to work?
it's like a commerce clause issue, right? Isn't this more of a sort of a federal issue now that the state of Montana has done this, but the internet is inherently just this ubiquitous presence that doesn't honor, boundaries on a map, and users don't really have any idea, of their IP address or where they're situated. I think someone like In the Cloud could even give us more insight as to how ridiculous of an issue this might be. And I would be interested in that. If anybody wants to write to us,
here's an example.
The tech background of this. Enforcement is the issue, and this bill doesn't appear to be drafted in a manner that guides the practical enforcement of this ban. right?
So, here, and just for those of you who are non-lawyers, you hear a lawyer say interstate commerce. Why would they mention this? So, again, the federal government is supposedly one of limited powers, and one, unless the powers are enumerated in the Constitution or implied, is somehow found necessary by a court looking at an issue, the power doesn't exist. And without power, there's no jurisdiction. Without jurisdiction, there is no law. Now, obviously, in our lifetimes and before, the federal government has become enormously powerful. And one of the mainline sources of its power is its ability to regulate interstate commerce. And states, and when Congress has that power, when the federal government has that power is supreme. And so the power over interstate commerce is the supreme law of the land, and it's a congressional power, it's a federal power. We've got Montana now saying you cannot sell an app within our state. And this might have the effect on interstate commerce of making it impossible for purveyors of TikTok to do business at all anywhere, because if they sell it in Idaho or California or Illinois on an app that's available in Montana, they'll be exposing themselves to liability in Montana in ways that might infect interstate commerce altogether. It's a troublesome issue. From a First Amendment issue context, it's less troublesome to me because this is a blanket prohibition rather than a targeted prohibition. It's content neutral, and on its face, it might survive First Amendment scrutiny, but I think it's going to have significant Commerce Clause issues.
Yeah,
we'll keep an eye on this, Jacqueline, and return to it.
Yeah, 2 comments here in the Rumble chat. Bathtub Liquor says, that is kind of the same way DraftKings operates. Geolocation stops you from using something, but that that is App Store based, not user based. And then in the cloud follows up by saying apps are cloud based. It's totally a Commerce Clause issue. Lawyer Will says Epic Games is based in North Carolina. Duh. And has been litigating against Apple over its App Store payment policies. And that is specific to Fortnite, Lawyer Will. I think Fortnite is the one that was removed from the App Store because they were trying to renegotiate their deal with Apple. And then Apple said, well, just get out. And the cloud follows up by saying the platforms for distributing the apps may have a home-based location, but it's an interstate issue.
All right. Hey, listen, so tonight I'm going to be at the Mohegan Sun. I know Jacqueline P. is threatening to be there with her husband, and she's going to be heckling me, she says, from the second row with a sign that says, drop your drawers. Well, all right, we'll see about that. But let's end on a high note. I hope to see you at Mohegan Sun, the Comics Roadhouse at 10 p.m. It's amateur night, and I'll be one of the amateurs. But those of you always aching for a good read, oh, there it is, Cormac McCarthy's the first volume of his new thing, 2-volume set, The Passenger. Let me read you a paragraph from Cormac McCarthy. This will illustrate why I love him and why you will too. When the onset of the universal night is finally acknowledged as irreversible, it seems like we're there, folks. Bing, 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 bing. Even the coldest cynic will be astonished at the celerity with which every rule and stricture shoring up the creaking edifice is abandoned and every aberration embraced. It should be quite a spectacle, however brief. I suspect we are living in fraught times, that we've come to the end of an historic era, and that we've now embraced diversity for diversity's sake, and every pot is saying to the potter, why makest me thus? And as we all make our exclusive demands for universal recognition, we've worn the hell out of one another, but we're still having to live with one another. And so there's a discussion to be had beyond the wreckage of our time. And if you've come to Law and Legitimacy, you've come because you want to participate in that discussion. We welcome you back each and every day, and thank you for listening today. See you tonight at the Mohegan Sun.
Yep. Thank you to everybody who's joined us today. If you're new, we thank you. If you are not new, we especially thank you. We love your continued presence here and your involvement. That book again, Norm, it's called
Cormac McCarthy, The Passenger. It's the first of a 2-volume set, just came out. Cormac McCarthy is my idea of a hero. If there's one, people say if you could meet one person and spend an hour with him, who would it be? Well, mine would be Cormac McCarthy. The man writes with the soul of a prophet and the humility of a man who's been undone by his own sorrows. even though the vocabulary is like 6 college professors on crack. But Cormac McCarthy, take a look at it. The Passenger. Those of you needing a good read in the middle of the night will thank us for mentioning it.
Indeed. Put a thumbs up in the chat for Cormac McCarthy. And if you are on Twitter, please share this. If you're on Rumble and YouTube Live, please subscribe and also consider sharing. We are on Locals, and we enjoy seeing those subscriptions and memberships increase. Please consider becoming a member. You can find every day's stream immediately uploaded to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Overcast, or wherever you find podcasts. And Norm, there's still another day in this week. It seems impossible because it's gone by with reckless abandon, but we still got one more day. So
yeah, tomorrow will be the sleepless edition, since it'll be a late night at the casino. But we'll be here bright and early at 8 o'clock. See you then.
Sounds good. See you tomorrow.